This video will make it much easier for you to do massive scale animations. So the key to making elaborate animations without losing your mind is organization. The videos in my animator versus animation series have gradually become more and more complicated and full of stuff with each new video, and naturally I've had to come up with systems to organize all the stuff so that I don't go crazy. If I had to boil it down to a few points, I would say this. 1. Make your work as easy as possible to change later. 2. Save a new copy every time you work. 3. Give everything a proper name. 4. Use folders. So by far the most important one in my opinion is number 1, making it as easy as possible to change later, because you probably will need to change it later, and if it's not organized well, it can be the most painful and tedious thing to do. Example, when I made animator versus animation back in high school, I didn't know a single thing about organizing in Flash. I tried to fit as much as I could on as few layers as possible. So as you can see, there are only 8 layers, and for most of it, only 3 of them are actually used. So in my mind, less layers was easier to work with. So that meant putting multiple things on a single layer and creating a copy of all those things every time I wanted any one of those things to move. So if I wanted to change the position of one thing, I would have to change it for every single frame. I've actually had to do this a few times, and I can say from experience that it is not fun at all. So here are some ways to prevent this problem. Don't think that more layers is bad. In fact, never be afraid to use a lot of layers. Keep everything on separate layers. If 2 things are on the same layer and one thing changes while the other thing doesn't, split them up. This will also allow you to add classic tweens to these layers, because tweens don't work when 2 symbols are on the same layer. If anything is going to exist for more than one keyframe, it should probably be converted into a symbol. That way, if you want to change it later, you only have to change it once. If you need a significant amount of new layers to pull something off, and you won't need all those layers later in the animation, make a new symbol to put those layers in. That way you can fit hundreds of layers on a single layer. I did this for the arrows in Animation vs. Minecraft. Hundreds of arrows only take up one layer in the main timeline. For things like hands or mouth shapes or anything that changes often, keep the different shapes organized by putting them as different frames in a single symbol. Then keep the looping setting on single frame and change the frame whenever needed. This is how I'm doing the thumbnails in Animation vs. YouTube. It's all one symbol, but I can change its appearance by switching the frame that it's on. That way I don't have to worry about dragging a new image onto the perfect spot every time I want to replace it. So that was my first main point, make your work as easy as possible to change later. Second point, save a new copy every time you work. So whenever you're spending multiple days working on something, start each day by saving a new copy and working on that. That way, if the file somehow gets corrupted or you totally screw things up, you can go back to the previous day's file and keep working, instead of having to start over from the very beginning. Third point, give everything a proper name. When working with a lot of symbols, it can be tempting to go with the automatic names that it gives you, and just call things symbol 1, symbol 2, symbol 3, and so on. But this will make it very hard to find that symbol later on. For example, if it's an arm, call it arm. But if there are many arms in the scene, don't just call them arm 1, arm 2, and arm 3. Put what it is followed by something specific about it. For example, arm bent or arm straight. By putting arm first instead of doing bent arm or straight arm, you can arrange your library by name and all the arms will be together. There is a hierarchy to it. If you have multiple characters, then you want to organize the different body parts by which character owns them. So instead of saying arm bent Steve, you would put Steve arm bent. This would group all of Steve's body parts together, and then the types of arms together as a subcategory of Steve. And last, use folders. There are options to use folders in your library by clicking here, as well as with your layers by clicking here. This can keep your symbols and layers organized. For example, when I'm done with an animation and I want to add sound effects, I usually put everything in my library into a folder and call it Not Sounds. Then I have a fresh empty library to drag sounds into, and I don't have to worry about scrolling through all the other symbols to find my sounds. But this is just what I do. I know there's better ways to use folders to organize your library. Also, when your character has many body parts on different layers, you can put all the layers of that character in a folder, and when you're not animating that character, you can collapse the folder to free up layer space. Using folders is essential outside the program as well. I use folders to separate my Flash files, my picture files, and my Adobe Premiere project files and final renders. There could be many other folders and subfolders depending on what you are working on. For example, with Animation vs. Minecraft, I had folders to store all my block and item images, and with my new project Animation vs. YouTube, I have several folders to store YouTube videos. I've broken it up into videos that need editing, videos that are ready to convert to FLV, and videos that are converted to FLV. I do this because Flash doesn't let you import videos that aren't in FLV format. So a lot of people ask me what kind of tablet I use, what kind of software I use, and other questions like that. I personally don't think the type of tablet matters that much. I was using a tiny 4x5 inch Wacom Graphire 4 to make the first 4 Animator vs. Animations. Then I moved up to an Intuos 4 simply because it was handed down to me from my sister, who is a digital illustrator. Basically, the more money you pay, the more space to draw that you get. It's up to you. But if you'd still like to know what I use, I've created a page on my website to answer that question. Click here for that. This includes the various software I use to record my screen and edit sound, as well as the microphone that I use. Also, if you're interested in directly seeing how I stay organized when animating, I'm actually selling digital downloads to the project files of each of my Animator vs. Animation videos. You can find those here. Since the first 2 videos are less organized than the rest of them, I bundled the first 3 of them together for the same price as one of them. So, please leave a comment if you have an idea for something you'd like me to teach. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.